First thing before you get started with your bezel set is go ahead and grab your gloves. We'll set our box to the side. We're going to be using these dried flowers. I'm going to go ahead and select these gold bezel earrings and necklace pieces. We'll craft with just one of the hearts today. And I'm going to make it a necklace, so I'll just pull out my hardware as well. You'll see that it comes with a matching necklace piece as well as a pinch bail. So go ahead and set your other pieces aside for safekeeping. Once you have the pieces you want to use, go ahead and put them off to the side and grab the rest of the pieces. We'll also be using our resin tape. So you can go ahead and open that up. With the resin tape, you'll notice the yellow end is where you want to start peeling. You won't need a whole lot for this craft, so just grab your scissors and cut off a little piece. That way you can secure the bezel safely on there. You'll want to set that resin tape down with the sticky side facing up, and then go ahead and place your bezel on it. You can use one of your tools to go ahead and really press that bezel down to make sure it's flat against the tape. And then put your scissors away for now. We'll go ahead and use these dried flowers as well. So go ahead and grab those. There is a perforated line that you can use to open them, or you can just cut them open as well. And right now we're really just gathering all the pieces that we need. That way, once we have the resin out, we've got everything around to complete the project. Go ahead and carefully set those down aside. You'll notice there's a little plastic envelope inside of the packaging to help keep the flowers in place. You'll want to get your UV resin. So go ahead and pull that out of the box. You'll notice it is carefully packaged with a little slip in there to protect the nozzle from spilling. Once you have that out, go ahead and set it to the side. You can also remove the little lid part of it. That way you're really ready to go. We're also going to want to use a glitter for this craft. I'm going to go ahead and pick my UV glitter out of the bunch. And you'll need your silicone bowl and wand. Next, we'll also need our flashlight. So go ahead and grab your UV flashlight and unbox that. While you're taking it out of the package, you'll notice it is bubble wrapped. You can also see that there is an end to unscrew, so go ahead and just hold it in place and unscrew the edge. Once you've got that ending off, you can go ahead and pull out the battery pack. You'll see little arrows and directional advice for how to make those batteries go in there the right way. Once you've got your positives where the positives go and the negatives where the negatives go, you'll want to put that back in the flashlight using the directional arrow on the side of the battery pack. Once you've got that in, go ahead and screw on the backing and then give it a test to make sure it works. If you were successful with your flashlight, it is time to move on to the next step. We're going to show you a fun trick. You can shine your UV flashlight at your UV glitter, and then once you remove it, you'll see that the UV actually makes it color change to purple. So from white to purple. Next, we'll want to go ahead and start pouring our UV resin. If you haven't used UV resin before, I would definitely recommend to make sure you're using your gloves before you get your hands dirty. And then once you've got those gloves on, you can grab the glitter that you're going to use and your wand. We'll pour a little bit of that glitter into the UV resin. What we're doing first is we're creating a little backing layer for the jewelry. That way the back of it is going to be a nice shiny glitter. You'll also want to remove the cap from your glitter, so go ahead and just take that right off. Once that cap has been removed, you can go ahead and twist that back on, and then you'll want to use the sifting side of the glitter to go ahead and pour a little bit of glitter into your resin. With your resin, you really don't need a whole lot. Same with your glitter. This is just going to be a little backing piece for your jewelry piece. Go ahead and stir the glitter to make sure you've got a good consistency. What you're looking for with this is that it's not too chunky or too thin. If it is too chunky, you'll want to pour a little bit more resin in. If it's too thin, you can pour a little bit more glitter in. But basically, the light needs to be able to travel through the consistency. That way it can still cure. Once you have it spread out the way you like, go ahead and start pouring that resin backing into your bezel. You'll pour directly onto that resin tape. I like to start in the middle and then spread out the resin end to end over the bezel. This is going to be a thin layer. You'll want to do about 3 layers total, so keep that in mind while you're putting your resin in place. Once you have all the resin you need in your bezel, you can use the pointy side of your wand to go ahead and spread it all the way to the edges of the bezel, making sure you have one nice even layer for the backing piece of your jewelry. Now, if you are more patient than I am, you can also just wait it out. You'll notice that the resin is going to self-level, so it will spread on its own, or you can use that wand to give it a helping hand. Once you have all the resin spread out the way you like, go ahead and set your wand and bowl to the side. If you don't plan on using that resin or wand anymore for this particular part of the process, so you can let the UV light cure it as well. You'll want to cure that bezel piece for about 30 to 45 seconds. Since it's a very thin layer, it doesn't need a lot of time. You'll always start with your flashlight nice and high and slowly draw it into the bezel piece. That way you're slowly introducing those UV light rays to the object that you're curing. Once it's been about 30 to 45 seconds, you can go ahead and give it a tap with your gloved finger. You should hear it knock back at you when it's done. All right, so once that's cured, I'm going to go ahead and just cure my little bowl and wand as well, just to make sure that I can clean that out for the next project. Basically, once you cure it with the light, you can peel that resin right off and use it again. It's always a good practice to use a timer for the curing times. That way you make sure you're giving it enough time. So again, you can set your timer for about 30 to 45 seconds when you're curing that bezel piece. And then you can spend about the same amount of time with that silicone bowl and wand because they don't have a whole lot of resin in them at this point. Next, I'll want to go ahead and pick out the flowers that I'm going to use for my little flower sandwich and my bezel jewelry. Keep in mind you don't have to use the flowers as is, and you can also use your fun little toolkit to use the tweezers to pick out the flowers you'd like. So go ahead and just start grabbing those. Remember that you have scissors as well, so you can always trim them down to the size that you need. You don't have to do just exactly the way they look. Once you have your flowers picked out, go ahead and grab your resin. Put just a dab of that resin over anywhere where you want those flowers to be. The reason for this is we're using the resin as a glue. So you'll go ahead and just kind of spread that out over wherever you want those flowers to go. That way when we place the flowers, they're going to really stick in place. Now set your wand aside and go ahead and start putting your flowers where you'd like them to be. I'm going to trim this flower a little bit, that way I can create the scene the way I want it. You can really take your time with this, you don't need to move fast. With the resin, you don't have work time to worry about. As long as there's no direct light or UV light hitting your object, you should be just fine to take your time. So go ahead and measure it out the way you want, and then place it where you'd like that flower to live. Use the wand to really push that flower against the resin. The reason for this is you don't want to leave any space between the flower and the resin layer. It could provide bubbles, things like that. Basically, you just don't want any air in between where that flower is laid down and where the resin will be cured. So go ahead and just push those down. And then if you have any other flower pieces, add those in as well. You can also throw a little foliage in there if you want, whatever you'd like to do to make it your own. Once you have those flowers put in place and you've pressed them down, you'll go ahead and give it a quick cure with your flashlight. This time we don't need to do much time at all. Give it about 20 seconds because there really isn't a whole lot of resin to work with here. Again, your timer is your friend for this, so go ahead and set your timer. That way you make sure you're giving it appropriate cure. And then once you're done, we'll move on to the very last layer of the flower sandwich. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and cure my little wand while I'm making sure my bezel piece is dry. Looks like it is, nice and cured. And then since that's dry, I'm also going to head and cure the bowl and the wand just to make sure that they're ready for my next craft as well. This isn't something that you have to do in between projects. It's just a really easy way to clean as you go. That way you're always ready to keep crafting. Once you're done curing everything, go ahead and grab your resin. You're going to want to fill to the top line of the bezel. This is going to be your final layer, so really just try to keep it even with the edge of the bezel and not go over. I usually kind of circle around the edges and then fill in the center as I go. So really just take your time, go ahead and pour that resin evenly. You're going to want to give it a minute too once you get the resin in there. That way it can really soak into the flower. If there is any air or space in between that flower and the resin, give it a moment to settle. That way those air bubbles can rise and pop on their own. If you happen to see any big bubbles, anything like that, you can always use your wand or even your weeding tool to just go ahead and poke the bubble if you don't have the patience to wait it out. So I saw one right there, so I'm going to go ahead and take care of those guys. And then once you're content with everything and you're sure that there's no bubbles, you can go ahead and grab your flashlight and give it a good cure. If you're not sure if you've spread the resin evenly, you can also use that wand to spread it out in the bezel. So just make sure that you've got it nice and even before you move on to this next curing process. Once you're ready to go, grab your flashlight, start nice and high, and then slowly draw that UV light into the bezel. That way you're not shocking the resin, you're slowly introducing it to the piece. For this last cure, you'll want to give it about 60 seconds. Go ahead and set your timer for that 60 seconds before you get started. That way you know how long to do your cure. Once you're done with this side, the reason why we're using that transparent resin tape is we're actually going to cure the back side as well. So much like a clear UV resin mold, we're using this clear tape. That way we can cure through both sides of it. Now, there's other options as well that you can do with your bezel jewelry once you're done. If you want to do like a doming effect, what you would do at this point is you would just go ahead and grab your UV resin and do another layer over the top, giving it a magnified look. And then you could cure it again. With using UV resin, you always want to make sure you're doing thin layers. That way you can go ahead and make sure the piece is fully cured. If you go too thick, it's a little bit hard for the light to travel all the way through. Looks like our piece is nice and cured on the front and the back, so now you can go ahead and peel it off. And there you have it. One little bezel set with a flower scene. And it has a nice glittery UV background. So now that that piece is done, we'll go ahead and grab our necklace hardware that we had out from earlier. If you need to open your pinch bail, go ahead and do so. And then you'll put the pinch bail over the hole on the bezel set and just go ahead and clip it closed. and you're done. One completed necklace.